It's good to have you with us. This is the Daily Report for Thursday, January 27th. We continue our coverage of Omicron on the local front today as authorities mark another fresh high in daily cases. I have Kwonsua standing by. So let's begin with the tallies for today.
Sunny, for the second straight day, Korea posted a record high in COVID-19 infections, and that driven by the Omicron variant. Over 14,500 cases were posted as of 12 a.m., and that includes 14,301 domestic transmissions, which is up from the day before, and 217 imported cases, which is down from Wednesday. Now, moving over to our map. Many places across the region, across the country that is, are seeing record high figures, including all three parts of the metropolitan region, with Gyeonggi-do province over 4,700 cases. And Incheon, for the first time, has surpassed 1,000 infections this Thursday. Meanwhile, here in Daegu, with 770 cases, this is also the highest caseload here in this part of the region, where the first massive outbreak was recorded at the beginning of the pandemic here in Korea. Now, moving over to our graph, it's been a rise by around 1,500 cases from the day before, but compared to last Thursday, it is an on-week jump by over, or roughly 8,000 infections, close to 8,000, I should say. And with that, Korea has a total of close to 777,500 infections in total. Now, let's take a look at the number of patients in severe or critical condition. That has been going downward lately, and for the third straight day, now in the 300s. And onto the vaccination front, not a big change in these numbers here, the number of people who got their first or second dose, but now we've got 50.7% of the nation's population, or 26 million, who received a booster shot. And globally, 3.89 million new cases were posted in the span of a day as of noon Korea time, with over 11,800 new deaths. And onto the countries with the highest number of caseloads, the U.S. reported more than 700,000 new cases, India more than 286,000 infections, and France, again, over 400,000 cases in just a day. And those are the general updates I have for now, but I'll see you back in a bit. Sunny?
All right, so thank you for those tallies. As expected, we delve now into the COVID-19 situation here in Korea. I have Shin Yeon with me in the studio for that. Yeon, welcome.
Great to be here, Sunny.
Right, so let's begin with remarks by President Moon Jae-in, who, as you mentioned back on Wednesday, held a meeting to address the country's Omicron, that is, containment effort.
That's right, Sunny. President Moon called an emergency meeting at the Blue House Wednesday afternoon, where he was joined by top government officials like the Education Minister and the KDCA Commissioner. This was President Moon's first in-person meeting following his return from the UAE, Saudi Arabia, and Egypt. A host of issues were discussed, ranging from the country's response to the Omicron variant, especially ahead of the Lunar New Year holiday, all the way to ways of making efficient use of our limited medical resources. President Moon also called on local governments to prepare themselves ahead of changes in the country's testing protocols. He specifically urged authorities to have enough rapid antigen test kits ready, which will become the primary method of screening for most people. He also highlighted the need to secure enough hospital beds, especially for children, amid the surge in our daily tallies. And a top Blue House official told reporters following the president's meeting that discussions there had left the door open to possible changes in our current prevention strategy. Now, this could also include different ways of compiling COVID-19 related data, like categorizing serious illnesses and deaths by age group. For example, we would be categorizing those over the age of 50 and then those below.
Right, and yeah, do touch upon the importance of rapid antigen tests as we seek to contain Omicron.
Right, so authorities have determined that Omicron may trigger an exponential increase in the number of cases and strain our PCR testing capacity. So for regular screening purposes on young, healthy people, they've decided to replace PCR tests with rapid antigen diagnostic kits. Only those over 60 at high risk or those with a suspected infection will be able to receive a PCR test. And this measure had first taken effect in 4 parts of Korea that have been hit the hardest by the Omicron variant, and the new testing method will be made compulsory nationwide from February 3rd. Rapid antigen test kits will be available for use at testing centers and even local clinics.
Right, Yeon. Now, let's take a moment, precisely at this moment, that is, to learn a bit more about the rollout of rapid antigen tests here in the country, in line with efforts to offset the potential medical burden of rampant testings amid the spread of Omicron. Our Anseong has more.
COVID-19 testing centers are getting ready for Omicron. Starting from Wednesday, 4 parts of South Korea that have seen widespread Omicron infections, Pyeongtaek and Anseong cities in Gyeonggi-do province, Gwangju and Jeollanam-do province, will have rapid antigen self-test kits available at their testing centers. These quick-to-use kits are here to test as many people as possible to help cope with the steep spike in infections.
These rapid antigen tests are like screening tests. When Omicron cases increase, we won't be able to test everybody with PCR. That's why we need to first test people with these rapid tests.
Now there's a line for people who are waiting to get their PCR tests. And over here, there's a new line for people who are waiting to get their rapid antigen tests. After they get tested, they just need to wait for 15 minutes over here until they get their test results back. I've also tried the rapid antigen testing myself. On the first day of trials, the clinic's medical workers were there to help me and others through the process to minimize confusion. But these rapid tests are actually supposed to be self-administered. Once there's an overflow of people coming here to get tested, it's going to be up to themselves to test for the virus, so that health workers don't carry the unbearable workload alone. Now I'm pretty nervous to see if I test positive. If I do, I have to get tested again with the PCR test along with the other high-risk groups. High-risk groups include those who are 60 or older, those whose health conditions put them at high risk, or those who have enough reason to suspect that they have been infected with COVID-19. Luckily, I have tested negative, so I'm good to go. If I want, I can even get a vaccine pass waiver that lasts for 24 hours. From Saturday, the rapid antigen tests will be rolled out at testing centers nationwide. Anseong, Arirang News.
Right, so as reported by Anseong and by Yeon, rapid antigen tests will be available to the majority of the people starting next Thursday. And I understand the academic arena, Yeon, is also mulling over the possible adoption of these test kits.
That's right. The Ministry of Education says it's considering to implement these rapid antigen test kits at schools nationwide. And currently, schools only provide PCR testing to students. Under 18s made up around 30% of our daily cases on Tuesday, a source of concern for the Education Ministry, which is looking to hold in-person classes very soon, actually. They're trying to begin it in March. And already 1,189 schools in the nation have fully reopened, and that's taking around 10%. And the Ministry of Education is set to release a new set of guidelines just specifically tackling Omicron while they can handle classes, whether that be in person.
And that need has been particularly stressed as the youngest population cannot get vaccinated, or those who are eligible, namely those aged 12 to 17, have the lowest vaccination rate. As of latest, 72.2% of those aged 12 to 19 have received their first vaccine shot and 66.7% their second. However, in the 12 to 17 bracket, it's just 64.5% and 57.7% each for the first and second shot.
Right, well, prevention is better than cure, so I suppose along with more vaccinations, more testings are also inevitable, right, Yeon?
That's exactly right, Sunny.
Right then, Yeon, thank you for your input. I'll see you on Friday.
Thank you so much.
Right, so let's now turn our attention to the COVID-19 situation unfolding on the international arena. I understand you have the latest tally by the global health body.
Right, Sunny. So the World Health Organization, in its most recent weekly tally, reported an all-time high of 21 million COVID-19 infections worldwide. And that's the span between January 17th until the 23rd. It marks a rise by 5% on week. But when it comes to fatalities, the numbers were similar to last past week at close to 50,000.
Right, and so which countries are bearing the brunt of this latest assault?
Well, the biggest increase was observed in the Middle East with an on-week surge of 39%, followed by 36% in Southeast Asia and 13% in Europe. So there's been a slight shift here in the trend, and there's also a slight positive development as the WHO says that the rate of increase appears to be slowing, with only half of all the regions in the world having posted an increase in the past week.
Right, I see. Meanwhile, so over in the US, I understand Omicron is accounting for nearly all COVID-19 cases there.
Yes, Sonny. According to the US CDC, 99.9% of cases recently are the Omicron variant, meaning 0.1% are the Delta variant. There are some optimistic figures in the US, though, despite having reported the highest number of cases in the past week in the world, with more than 4.2 million between January 17th and 23rd, if we refer to the WHO tally again. But according to the CDC on Wednesday, which cited figures from the day before, there has been a drop in cases and hospitalizations by 6% and 8% respectively. While noting a lower severity rate than with prior variants, the head of the CDC, Rochelle Walensky, said mild does not mean mild, as nearly 2,200 deaths occur daily.
Right, a valid point there. And in Germany, so I understand record tallies in the country have prompted talk about mandating vaccines.
Right, Sunny. So on Wednesday, the country registered an all-time high of around 164,000 COVID-19 infections, with close to 90% of those being the highly transmissible Omicron variant. Now, according to local data, over 1.53 million are currently sick from the virus, also marking the highest figures since the pandemic began. Lawmakers are debating on making vaccinations in the country compulsory. Some options under consideration are universal mandates for everyone aged over 18, or only those over the age of 50, or vulnerable citizens at high risk. Now, the third option is to completely ban mandatory inoculations. Germany's health minister called on swift action, saying triple vaccinations for all eligible is what will protect them and others.
If we push the problem away from us, then the problem will come back in full force. We cannot continue to inflict that on the children, the caregivers, the doctors, the people who are at risk, who we cannot vaccinate. We cannot continue to inflict that on these vulnerable and burdened people. We have to act.
Right, and while Germany is looking to boost such prevention efforts, I understand Denmark is looking to ease their grip.
Yes, Denmark is expected to become the first country in Europe to lift all of its remaining COVID-19 restrictions. Officials cite stable numbers of hospitalizations as well as fatalities, and that thanks to a high vaccination rate. Danish Prime Minister Mette Frederiksen at a press conference on Wednesday called this incredible good news, welcoming the life the country knew before COVID. This means starting Tuesday, no more vaccine passes, no more curfews at bars and restaurants, and no more mask wearing. Some border measures, however, are expected to stay in place for 4 more weeks, as well as testings or quarantine for travelers, depending on their vaccination status. Now, some concerns remain, though, despite having a vaccination rate at around 80%, as Denmark has been reporting a surge of the so-called BA2 cases, which is a subvariant of the Omicron variant, and still some 40,000 daily infections are occurring there. I believe the last number I saw was 46,000 for Wednesday local time, so that's why there are still some pundits saying it may be a little too early.
Right, I see. All right, then, so thank you very much for those updates.
My pleasure.
Earlier on this Thursday morning, North Korea is believed to have test-launched 2 missiles into the East Sea. According to South Korea's Joint Chiefs of Staff, the 2 missiles appear to have been short-range ballistic missiles fired from the North's Hamgyong region. The missiles reportedly flew northeast for 190 kilometers at an altitude of 20 kilometers. Officials here and their U.S. counterparts are assessing the latest situation, which, if confirmed by Pyongyang, marks its 6th test launch of missiles this month alone. The Blue House, for its part, held an emergency National Security Council meeting in light of the recent event and has voiced deep regret. On the international front, delegates from Russia, Ukraine, France and Germany have held marathon talks in Paris on Wednesday and agreed to abide by a truce in eastern Ukraine that was announced back in the year 2014. Our Kim Dami has more.
While tensions intensify in Eastern Europe, Russia, Ukraine, France and Germany have agreed to uphold a ceasefire in talks held under the Normandy format. The talks are an informal forum established by diplomats from the 4 sides in 2014 after Russia-backed separatists kickstarted conflict in Ukraine's eastern Donbass region. Wednesday's 8-hour forum marked the first Russia-Ukraine talks since Moscow's latest military buildup near Ukraine's border. It's also the first joint statement to be signed by Russia and Ukraine since December 2019, when Russian President Vladimir Putin and his Ukrainian counterpart Volodymyr Zelensky met in person. While friends in Ukraine have called the statement meaningful, Russia drew the line, saying there had not been much progress in the latest round of Normandy talks and that the matter discussed is separate from tensions near Ukraine's border. The 4 nations will meet again in Berlin within the next 2 weeks for further negotiations. In the meantime, the United States and NATO have told Russia there will be no concessions on Moscow's main demands to resolve the Ukraine crisis. U.S. Secretary of State Antony Blinken said Wednesday that Washington has given Moscow its written response, laying out a serious diplomatic path forward should Russia choose it. According to AP, Russia has received a written response from the U.S. ambassador to Russia, John Sullivan. Blinken said that he expects to have follow-up discussions with his Russian counterpart, Sergei Lavrov, in the coming days. Russia is demanding Ukraine be blocked from becoming a NATO member and for limits to be put on NATO troops on the bloc's eastern front. Kim Dami, Arirang News.
Here on the local front, Samsung Electronics appears to have beaten the pandemic last year. Company findings show profits jumped, especially in the 4th quarter of 2021, driven by semiconductors and smartphones. Here's Anseong.
Samsung Electronics posted better than expected earnings in 2021. According to the firm's earnings guidance on Thursday, its estimated operating profit last year was around $43 billion, around 44% higher compared to 2020. This is the company's 3rd highest operating profit ever and the largest since 2018 semiconductor boom period. Sales hit a record $232 billion, up 18% compared to the year before. Operating profit in the final 3 months of 2021 was around $11 billion, up 53% on year. The surprising earnings were led by semiconductors with $78 billion in sales, making Samsung the world's market leader, topping Intel for the first time in 3 years. Analysts say the average selling price of semiconductors has increased compared to the previous year, and Samsung has expanded to the most up-to-date manufacturing processes. Samsung Electronics' strong earnings were also largely due to its latest smartphone series, including the Galaxy Z Fold 3 and Galaxy Z Flip 3. 1 million of these new foldable phones were sold in the 39 days after their release, and around 8 million of Samsung's foldable phone models were sold last year. Samsung Electronics plans to unveil its new lineup of models, including the Galaxy S22, on February 10th. 엄지영, Arirang News.
In other news, criminal charges can be brought against CEOs in the case of tragic workplace accidents. So says a new law aimed at cracking down on negligence regarding safety protocols. Our Kim Do-yeon reports.
On January 11th, the nation saw this building suddenly collapse while under construction in South Korea, leaving 1 worker dead and 5 still missing as of Wednesday. The incident came just a couple of weeks before a new law took effect in the country on Thursday to safeguard against accidents such as these. It's called the Serious Accident Punishment Act, and its main purpose is to hold those at the top accountable for safety procedures not being enforced or followed. A death on site could result in a prison term of at least 1 year or a fine of up to 1 billion won or $835,000 if safety measures weren't managed thoroughly. Punishments for non-fatal accidents that lead to 2 or more injuries lasting more than 6 months could lead to a maximum of 7 years in prison.
Police officers or prosecutors are subject to at least 1 year in prison for causing bodily harm. It can be seen that the minimum prison time was stipulated for business owners or managers based on a similar level of duties, responsibilities, and morality.
As of now, the law applies to companies with 50 or more employees. Those below that threshold will be included in the law starting January 2024. Businesses will be walking on thin ice when the new law takes effect, especially those in the construction sector. According to the Ministry of Employment and Labor, of the 576 companies involved in serious accidents last year, more than half of them were in construction.
Our company recently reorganized the safety management team and is expanding the investment into the safety management budget. That said, we have a plan to practice safety management through a more systematic division of work.
There are definitely things being strengthened, and the companies in charge are coming out to do more frequent inspections because of the new law coming in. Also, workers are more alert and aware due to this new law.
The South Korean government is also trying to help companies adapt. The Ministry of Employment and Labor has allotted its biggest ever budget for safety issues at more than $900 million. However, the ball is now in the court of the country's judicial branch, as the manner in which the first individuals are held accountable will set the precedent for this new act. Kim Do-yeon, Arirang News.
Let's take a look at what's going on in the world now. Honduras is set to make history on Thursday when it swears in the country's first female president, Anseong Castro. Castro is a self-proclaimed democratic socialist in a nation where the left has rarely seen support and few women hold public office. But the president-elect was able to garner significant support, with many of the country's citizens tired of corruption and the concentration of power since 2009, when her husband and the former president Manuel Zelaya was deposed in a coup after allying with late Venezuelan President Hugo Chavez. Castro's victory also brings an end to over 12 years of conservative National Party rule. She's promised significant changes in Honduras, including a constitutional overhaul, fighting corruption alongside the UN, and loosening restrictions on abortion. While Honduras may be introducing their new leader soon, Italy is no closer to choosing their own. The country's political parties held a third round of voting on Wednesday to elect a new head of state, but parties are at loggerheads over a mutually acceptable candidate. The race for the 7-year role as the president of Italy is still wide open, as neither the center-right nor the center-left bloc have enough votes to carry their candidates. The ongoing deadlock comes as the majority of the 1,009 lawmakers and regional delegates casted blank ballots on the first 2 days in a bid to buy time while negotiations continue. A candidate needs a 2/3 majority in any of the first 3 rounds of voting. Over in Mexico, journalists on Tuesday began a nationwide protest to denounce the recent murders of 3 reporters, calling for an end to the impunity that has often characterized the killings of their colleagues. The latest protests come as journalist Lourdes Maldonado was shot and killed on Sunday, with no arrests made just 3 years after she told the president that she feared for her life. President Andrés Manuel López Obrador has long been criticized for not doing more to protect reporters, but said his government would investigate and prevent further murders of journalists. Finally, over to India, where the country showcased its latest weaponry, technological advancements, and its cultural diversity during their 73rd Republic Day celebrations in New Delhi on Wednesday. Military tanks, weapons, and missiles were showcased throughout the celebrations, followed by traditional dance and art performances. India won independence from British rule on August 15, 1947, but it wasn't until January 26, 1950 that the country declared itself a sovereign republic. Lee Seung-jae, Arirang News.
It's that time of the week yet again when we touch upon some of the foreign media coverage of events here in this part of the world. As always, I have Kim Sung-yeon in the studio with me. Welcome, Sung-yeon.
Great to see you, Sunny. So much international media coverage, as you can imagine, shedding light once again on North Korea's missile tests. And there were reports also on South Korea's economic growth. And in line with that, I came across a story on the exports of gochujang, or Korean pepper paste, red pepper paste. And lastly, regarding Korea's goal of getting rid of marine plastic waste. So let's dive right in. North Korea fired what are presumed to be 2 short-range ballistic missiles Thursday, a move believed to be its 6th missile test this month by the Kim Jong-un regime. AP News cited some experts who said that North Korea could further escalate weapons demonstrations following the Beijing Winter Olympics, who added that it seems the North's leadership is trying to use dramatic provocation to pressure the Biden administration. Another article by the New York Times also noted that Kim Jong-un believes that saber rattling is the best method for him to get the U.S.'s attention, and that the latest tests prove a clear message from the Kim regime, which is that Kim feels he is being ignored and wants to re-engage with the U.S. The New York Times indicated that the tests individually do not amount to much, as their weapons are still under development, but put together, they show that Kim plans to use this year to get out of its diplomatic slumber with the U.S. The Times elaborated that this year is a promising time for Kim to make a statement, since China is busy getting ready for the Olympics, South Korea is electing a new president in March, and Russia is hinting at a possible invasion of Ukraine, making the Biden administration anxious. Furthermore, this year marks the beginning of Kim's 2nd decade in rule, so he wants to make sure to reassert his authority to his people.
Right, Sung-yeon. Meanwhile, on the local economic front, there was quite a bit of coverage, as you mentioned, about Korea's growth rate for last year.
Yes, so Sunny, data shows South Korea's economic growth hit an 11-year high in 2021 on the back of strong exports and corporate investments, which also means it rebounded from the previous year's negative growth. So Nikkei wrote that according to economists, the uptick in the local economy will pave the way to tighter monetary policy in 2022. An expert was cited as saying that even though the Omicron variant will prove to be a stumbling block this quarter, the overall recovery is likely to be back on track sooner than later. Bloomberg also noted that the local economy expanded at a speedier pace, helped by firm export demand, as well as a pickup in consumption that came before the Omicron appeared. The report also explained that this acceleration also supports the BOK's perception that the economy is continuing with sufficient momentum. In the meantime, Bloomberg mentioned that the next rate increase may come later on in the year due to the curbs raised by the Omicron. It further pointed out that the central bank may want to avoid taking action too close to the upcoming presidential election. Moreover, Bloomberg said exports have been the economy's backbone lately, with Korea's shipments hitting a record value in 2021. Data showed that exports, in fact, kept growing in the 4th quarter of last year, expanding at a faster pace of 4.3%.
Right, and speaking about exports, I understand outbound shipments of Korea's red pepper paste has surged.
Yes, Korean exports of red pepper paste, or gochujang in Korean, has soared. And we're talking about nearly 63% in the past 4 years, thanks to the global popularity of K-pop culture and K-content, according to data. So overseas shipments of red pepper paste, or gochujang, came to almost $51 million in 2020, up nearly 63% compared with year 2016 and 35% with year 2019, according to Korea Agro-Fisheries and Food Trade Corporation and the Agriculture Ministry. Business Standard noted that the surge seems to have taken place in recent years, with more foreigners becoming interested in Korean food through watching K-pop stars, as well as being exposed to more K content and culture. Experts explain that Korean wave, or Hallyu, brought on by such K-pop or Korean dramas, helped fans abroad to actively consume Korean products. The U.S. topped the export market with a share of more than 26%, followed by China with some 17% and Japan with over 10%.
Right. And lastly, as you mentioned, Song-yeon, there was foreign coverage of Korea's intentions to eliminate marine plastic waste by the year 2050, is it?
Yes, that's right, Sunny. So as we are all worried about plastic pollution in the ocean, Sunny, it does look like Korea is aiming to go neutral in marine plastic litter by the year 2050. So Shinhwa News noted that Korea's Minister of Oceans and Fisheries told a press conference with foreign correspondents that the Korean government takes the matter of ocean pollution very seriously and thus vows to completely eliminate it by 2050. Data showed that some 67,000 tons of plastic waste are generated annually in the Korean Ocean. Hence, the country's goal is to reduce the amount by 60% to 27,000 tons by 2030 and hopefully cut it down to zero by 2050. The minister emphasized that the goal is certainly not easy to achieve and requires international commitment and cooperation. Moreover, Shinhwa wrote that Korea also plans to realize negative carbon emissions in the marine and fisheries sector by 2050 via emissions reduction. It elaborated that Korea plans to achieve carbon neutrality through a variety of means, including replacing nearly 530 ships with eco-friendly vessels by 2030, also advancing low-carbon vessel technology and supporting hydrogen-powered ports.
Right, I see. Song-yeon, as always, thank you very much for the coverage.
The pleasure is mine.
Omicron is dominating the outbreak in quite a number of countries worldwide. Korea is no exception, with its daily tally having surpassed the 10,000 mark this week. For more on the COVID-19 situation here and elsewhere, I have Professor Kim Min-gyu from Yonsei University. Professor Kim, welcome back.
Thank you for having me.
I also have Dr. Kim Seung-taek from Institute Pasteur Korea. Dr. Kim, welcome back as well.
Good afternoon.
Meanwhile, joining the session virtually is Dr. Amitabh Arya at the Sanjay Gandhi Postgraduate Institute of Medical Sciences. Dr. Arya, it's a pleasure to have you back. Right. Professor Kim, we'll start here. A range of different forecasts are being made with regard to our daily tally in the days ahead, with authorities claiming that the tally could hit as high as 30,000. What is your forecast?
Well, I'm not good in expecting those numbers, but with caution, I think that it will be more than 30,000, but hopefully less than that big number, 200,000 or something. Always we have to think about three factors when this kind of pandemic happens. The first one is the virus factor. Second one is the government factor, giving out policies. And the third factor is the humans, I mean the general population. But before we speak more, now many things have changed. We used to focus on the total count of the confirmed cases. Now we want to focus more on severe cases. And in the aspect of this focus on severe cases, we have to think about the virus. And this Omicron has a less case fatality. In Korea, we used to have 0.8 fatality for Delta variant. And right now, the Omicron seems to be less than that, about 0.16%. That's good. And the government factor, we have only the number of severe cases, but I wish that we have more information about them. I mean, more detailed information, how severe are they and what is their vaccine status and when they got vaccinated and how many times they got it. If you understand that, the general population will understand what they have to do. And the third factor, humans. I mean, it's all developing very fast, and some people have low credibility on vaccines after the emergence of Delta and Omicron. So I see that the severe cases are decreasing day by day, but it's the number that is decreasing is almost the same number with fatalities. That means if you become severe case, there's not much high chance you're going to survive. So that means prevention is very important. So let the people understand about the situation, and at least that will help to overcome this Omicron outbreak.
Right, I see. Dr. Arya, over in India, I hear Omicron infections have been retreating in large cities like New Delhi and Mumbai, and officials are now seeking to stem the spread in smaller towns. Do you suppose the worst of the Omicron wave in India is over?
It is receding now. Actually, we were thinking that in March we'll have a peak, but the way the cases have come so rapidly, I think in February we should peak and then the cases will go down further.
Right, so you have yet to witness a peak then?
Yeah.
Dr. Arya, most of the cases in India with regard to Omicron are mild infections, would you say?
It's a mild infection. Actually, I also got infected with Omicron recently. I joined on Monday. My entire family was infected due to me. It was like a mild flu, mild body ache, mild fever, and no serious problems. In fact, many of the doctors in my institute, this time, they were luckily safe in the Delta variant, but this time in Omicron, if one resident in the department got infected, almost every one of them got infected. Luckily, nobody needed any oxygen or any admission in the hospital, and all of them recovered within a week.
I see. It's good to know you're back, Dr. Arya, then. Yes. Dr. Kim, there is cautious optimism that Omicron and Omicron-fueled surge, that is, will be short-lived and will facilitate a transition into an endemic state of COVID-19. But some claim that this is not the case or may not be the case for Korea. Do you care to elaborate?
Well, the countries like the US and the European countries, they actually experience, or are still just experiencing this large number of just infections, probably just more than 100,000 cases. And then this is quite just explosive just infection case right now. But the situation in Korea might be just a little bit different, because I think just the major reason is that our Korean society is that our quarantine is pretty just much better than the conditions in the other countries. So then in other countries, they actually experience the sharp peak over a very short period of time. But if in our case, if our just quarantine procedure is still just successful, we might just experience very broad just distribution of some Omicron infection for relatively just a longer just period of time. So that might be just one of the probably the differences we might just experience. As long as we actually imagine some same number of just infection cases for this Omicron variant, and also our vaccination rate is pretty just higher than those countries, and especially also some booster shot. And then once we actually consider the booster shots for especially for some vulnerable people, including some elderly people, maybe we might just experience just a less number of just severe cases of COVID-19 as well.
Right, hopefully that will be the case. Dr. Arya, do tell us a bit about some of the containment measures adopted by authorities in India to fight Omicron, and how effective have they been?
It has been very effective, because most of the offices, especially the private ones, corporate ones, they are still having that work from home. And regarding the government facilities, they have asked for 50% of the staff to come, and rest they can work from home. And these restrictions definitely have done a lot of control on this Omicron variant. If we compare with the previous variant, definitely this time the authorities have done their job well. Last time, people took it very casually, but this time, people are also following the rules much better than the previous Delta variant wave.
Right.
So definitely, these measures have definitely led to the lesser spread of the disease.
Right, I see. And staying with containment efforts, Professor Kim, do you suppose Korea needs to strengthen its restrictions in response to this latest resurgence?
If I name the quarantine measures we embraced since now as a version 1.0, now this version 1.0 is used to be effective against original Wuhan strain, but less effective on Delta variant. There's a recent article on mortality morbidity monthly report that includes more than 1 million people from California and New York. And after the emergence of Delta variant, the vaccinated group without previous infection had a sharp rise in COVID-19, but not in the people previously infected with COVID-19, whether they got vaccinated or not. So that means infection-derived protection was greater after Delta variant. But vaccine is still effective preventing hospitalization. And this data is before Omicron, so we don't know about Omicron yet. I hope that this follow-up study will show up soon. So if we apply the same 1.0 version for Omicron, we are going to be limited. We're going to be disappointed because it's going to have only limited effects. So if we strengthen our quarantine measures, I think it should be focused on the risk group, high-risk group, to protect them. Otherwise, still we're going to have a high rise of severe cases in the future. So about outdoor activity, I think we can loosen some measures, and if you keep few meters from each other, the need for a mask is going to be lower. But about indoor spaces, we still have to wear masks, and when you're eating or drinking in a confined place, you should be very cautious, especially for risk group. And the toilet is a constant problem for spreading infections. So disinfecting those areas frequently is going to be needed.
Right, it will be a priority then, of course. Dr. Kim, recent reports show that those who got their booster shots are 90% less likely to be hospitalized. And in response to that, some US health experts are claiming that the term fully vaccinated needs to include a third shot. What are your thoughts on this?
Well, the effect of the booster shot is now just well documented from the many studies from all over the world. And then including the third shot, the booster shot as some basic vaccine schedule. Well, it's not really just not unusual. We actually have such kind of the 3-shot program is, for example, like hepatitis B vaccination. And then in it's earlier pandemic, we actually did not have enough time to try all different kinds of vaccination schedule. For that time, because the purpose was that distributing the vaccine as soon as possible was just the number one priority. So most of the vaccine companies actually tried the 3 or 4 week interval schedule between the first shot and the second shot. And the second shot, the efficacy was just remarkable. So then they distributed all the vaccines. But now since then, some data is has been accumulated, and then the effect of booster shot is well documented. And especially if I distinguish the antibody response and the T-cell responses, I think still many scientists believe that the T-cell response is still pretty good after the second shot. But for the antibody response is, I think some breadth of immune response is improved after the booster shot, and then increasing the interval between the shot is has been known for a long time to increase the quality of the immune response in our body. So the reason for the 3 to 4 weeks of interval in the first vaccine was that just because of emergency cases. But as more the data is accumulated, we might have a better understanding of why more a longer interval is important, or also some third shot is also beneficial compared to the 2-shot program.
Right, and staying with booster shots, Dr. Kim, more than 50% of Korea's population, just above 50%, that is, of the Korean population, has received a third dose, as mentioned by my colleague earlier on. How do you assess the pace of our booster campaign?
I think it's pretty good, and then I think most of the the group of people will get the most benefit by the booster shot is actually high-risk groups, mostly some elderly people and then also immune-compromised people. And actually last December, one of the reasons that Korea has actually suffered the many numbers of, large numbers of severe COVID-19 patients is that we actually had some very good expectation, but the severe number of severe cases increased because the cases actually reported mostly some elderly people and residing in some nursing home and then the nursing hospitals. And that those people, although they finished the two-shot programs, after waning immunity, they were became more vulnerable to those things. And then these people basically had underlying medical condition, and then immune, very weak immunity, so that they were vulnerable. But I think most of the elderly people got I think more than 85% of those people got the booster shot. Now I think they are now more better, prepared for the Omicron variant than others.
Right. And Dr. Arya, the WHO has asserted that 70% of each country's population needs to be fully vaccinated to end this state of global emergency. Now, having said that, where does India's inoculation campaign stand, and how feasible is the global health body's assertion?
In India, as per data, 1.62 billion individuals have been vaccinated, out of which 68% have been fully vaccinated and 91% have got one dose of the vaccine. And we are having booster doses as well for many patients, many individuals who have been fully vaccinated. So the vaccination program is going on very well, and those who have been fully vaccinated, they are getting booster doses also. And now the children from 15 to 18 also are being vaccinated as per the new program of the government of India. And very soon we are going to have, once the trials are over, we'll be having vaccination for children younger than 15 years.
Right, I see. And Professor Kim, under Korea's Omicron strategy, PCR testing will be reserved for those aged 60 and above and those in high-risk groups, while the rest of the population will be offered the rapid antigen testing. What are your thoughts on the shift in COVID-19 screening method?
I would like to mention some merits and disadvantages of rapid antigen test. It's very simple, easy to do, and you have a rapid result. But the critical shortcoming is not that sensitive enough. And it is useful when you got a positive result, but the negative result does not mean you are free of COVID-19. And it's going to cause a lot of confusion in general population. So how people is going to behave after they have a negative result? I think rapid antigen should be used after the capability of PCR test is all satisfied, and we might have to repeat the test next day or further for many reasons. If you have a new symptom, if the symptom does not subside, or if any people close by turned out to be positive, you might have to repeat that rapid test. And in hospital, I think we have to stay with PCR until the end of this pandemic.
Right. Dr. Kim, the isolation period for fully vaccinated COVID-19 patients has also been shortened to about a week, 7 days. What are your thoughts on the wisdom of this measure?
Well, there is some scientific evidence to shorten this period of isolation, and then just for comparison, actually U.S. CDC based on according to their recent guidelines, their isolation period is just 5 days. But the Korea now the 7 days, and then the basic scientific evidence for such kind of decision is that most of the transmission occurs 1 or 2 days before symptom onset, and then 2 or 3 days after the symptom. So most of the transmission occurs those periods. So the decision is based on this number. So what I mean is that although most of the transmission occurs those periods, but there are some minor cases that transmission outside of this just a window. So there is maybe some cautious. I mean the caution even after just finishing the isolation. The people, especially for the U.S. the CDC recommended just wearing masks for additional 5 5 days to just prevent the further potential transmission. And then this decision is actually based on some current situation, because Omicron is so just contagious at this moment. So that if once any just for example, like maybe 100,000 people are just infected, so then maybe including just family members, maybe we can just imagine like 500,000 people can be isolated out of just total Korean population. In this case, maybe we might just experience a severe workforce, just a loss of workforce, including the policemen and the firefighters. So this is just actually reflecting the substantial socio-economic reasons behind the decision.
Right, to keep society from grinding to a halt, of course.
Sure. Yeah.
Dr. Arya, given your observations of India's campaign against Omicron, what would be your words of advice with regard to setting up a strategic response to Omicron, for example, here in Korea?
Like a recent study of Indian Council of Medical Research says that those who are infected with Omicron have a better immune response to neutralize the virus, including the Delta variant. And so finally, the Omicron variant is becoming the dominant variant now across the globe, and especially in India. So still, what I think, we need to still practice social distancing. We have to still wear masks, wash your hands properly, or if you don't have soap and water, please use alcohol-based sanitizers. And all of the people should get vaccinated fully. If not, they need to have a booster as well. And slowly, I think my take is by March, April, across the globe, the Omicron cases will come to respectably low levels. And I think this is the third year of this virus. I think we'll be overcoming this very soon.
Right, hopefully we will then. And Professor Kim, here in the studio, very briefly speaking, what are your words of advice to members of the public as we look ahead to the Lunar New Year holiday?
Well, there's no guarantee that Omicron is going to be the final variant in this pandemic. There's no guarantee that the future variant will cause mild symptoms. So I would like to mention briefly about the official statement from Korean Pediatric Society. As we know that the portion of pediatric cases is rising very fast, and we must prepare severe cases even in the pediatric age group. And the current healthcare system for COVID-19 is actually designed for adults. And already the pediatric departments are facing many difficulties because we have less manpower, and we have to keep all the quarantine measures for that infectious disease. There are not enough special wards for children, so and for caregivers. So if we have to transfer somebody to other hospital, it takes a very, very long time if they have other health issues. There is no enough pediatricians and nurses to care about them. And there are more issues about home care issues and outpatient department issues. So I wish that our government makes some clear plans to face that Omicron with increased pediatric cases.
Right. In the meantime, members of the public can be sure to follow Dr. Arya's thoughts about washing your hands, wearing your face mask, and watching your distance.
Yeah.
All right, Professor Kim, thank you very much for your thoughts. Dr. Kim, thank you for being with us today. And Dr. Arya over in India, as always, thank you very much for your insights.
Kamsahamnida.
Right, well, that is all the time we have for this edition of the Daily Report. We'll be back with more coverage tomorrow. That is Friday. Join us then. Thank you for now.
When the lantern of wisdom and mercy lights